I'd like at this time to welcome three guests. Excited to have each of you on the show to talk about ranked choice voting. First, Delegate Sally Hudson, who represents Charlottesville and part of Albemarle County, Stanford and MIT graduate, and I might say Dr. Hudson, with a doctorate from MIT, and YouTube shows that you can see and everything that showing her involvement in the greater community. Chris Saxman, not a stranger to our viewers or to anyone, I think, in the Commonwealth, Virginia Free President, a political coach, a former delegate for about 10 years representing part of the Shenandoah Valley, and someone who has his free Friday noon Zooms. And if you haven't checked those out, you'll want to do it. And Gretchen Reinemeyer, Arlington General Registrar and Director of Elections, who at the young age of 18 got started in elections as a poll worker in Texas. Over the years, much of her career in Arlington, now as the head of the elections there, and someone who has observed elections in Europe and in the Ukraine and Russia. And so we got three delightful and informative experts. And Angel Minor, our co-host, is going to start with the first question and then to get you all right in to tell people about ranked choice voting. Angel.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. For our viewers, can you explain a little bit about what is ranked choice voting and how does it differ from the other methods that we use?
Delegate Hudson, why don't you start and others of you jump in?
Sure, happy to. Well, ranked choice voting is a small change to ballots that can make a big difference for democracy. In a ranked choice election, you don't just vote for one candidate, you get to rank the candidates in the order that you like them. So your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. And that's a really great system when we have elections where more than two people run, because it lets voters say, I've got a favorite candidate, and if that person can't win, then here are my backup options. And it's really important in a lot of the elections that we see today with those wide fields, because we've all had the experience of going to the ballot box and having to choose between voting for who we really like and voting for who we think might be able to win. And when you're able to say, here's my favorite and here's my backup, then we're able to solve that problem and let voters get the best of both worlds. When you rank the ballots like that, then we count them up like a runoff election. So we count all the first choice votes. And if somebody has a majority, then they win the election, just like any other race. But if no candidate has really earned that broad support from the electorate, then you knock off the lowest vote getter and transfer their voters' support to their second choice. And the process keeps going until you find somebody who has a majority. In that sense, it's just like any other runoff election, except you ask everybody up front and a computer can count them up instantly. So we get all the benefits of a runoff election, ensure that we elect somebody with majority support, but use the benefits of technology to do it a little more efficiently.
Okay, let me jump right in and go to Arlington County and tell us, Gretchen, what's happening there as a result of this legislation that was enacted just in 2020.
Yeah, so Arlington is our county board is considering adopting their county board members using ranked choice voting. It might not happen this year, but there are indications that it will happen by next year, 2022. For our county board race. And this initiative here in Arlington really has been a citizen-driven movement in Arlington. They have been active in both trying to get legislation passed by the General Assembly so that we could use ranked choice voting at the local level. And also they've been advocating the county board so that they would consider shifting their voting nomination style to ranked choice voting.
And Chris, let me get you involved in this too and talk about your perspectives on it. And if you would, bring in the matter of the Republican Party of Virginia and the May 8th, the use of ranked choice voting.
Yeah, as a former teacher of U.S. history and government, this is a very intriguing reform idea. And I love these kinds of opportunities to tweak our democracy, if you will, especially when we live in such a binary reality when it comes to politics. And I just want to thank Delegate Hudson for being a real leader on bringing this debate forward. And I think with the Republicans taking it up as they have, normally you see conservatives just say no or be skeptical of most things that are new, which is the conservative mindset. I don't have a problem with that. But the fact that they embrace this for their nomination, which has been contentious all along, in a default situation, they really had to go to this with the unassembled convention they put together because they can't have an assembled convention. I think it's a great opportunity to see it in action and see how it works. And when friends of mine object to it or draw some disfavor to it, I liken it to Hall of Fame balloting for a lot of the elections in sports, because the sports metaphor tends to work with guys. And I said, when you ballot for your Hall of Fame, they get a first ballot, a second ballot. It's ranked choice. It's exactly what is described by Delegate Hudson. There is you get all these totals that go out, and you find out who the most for the Heisman Trophy. They do the same thing. So I liked it. I like it. I'm willing to experiment with it at this level and see what it produces. But I'm really excited that Arlington is considering doing it for their elections as a countywide in the general election. That's really exciting stuff. And I think it'll engage more people down ballot and take a look at other candidates and their perspectives and their issues. And I think it'll broaden the debate and deepen the debate.
What does the future of ranked choice voting look like? I was going to ask, do you see Democrats using it in statewide elections, presidential elections?
Well, to the extent that I can speak for Democrats, I think that we, just like Republicans, have a good problem on our hands, which is that we have a lot of people running for our statewide nominations. And so we need ranked choice voting to identify a consensus nominee. I think all of us are taught from a very early age that majority rule is a good thing in democracy, that you want to put forth the ideas that gather support from a lot of people. But without ranked choice voting, we can't ensure that the people who win our elections really do have majority support, that they've built a broad coalition and reached out to a lot of different people. When that works, when you've got only 2 people on the ballot, but when you got 5 people running for governor, when you've got 7 running for lieutenant governor, like we have on the Democratic ticket, then you need a better way to decide who really is the consensus builder. And so I think that a lot of Democratic voters are going to see that as they vote this spring, because they're going to feel that tension between voting for who they think they can win and voting for who they really like. And ranked choice votes gives us this really practical way, like Chris said, to source how everybody's feeling and then wind up with someone who's got broad support. And what I like about that is that I think it brings 2 things that most people are really craving in our politics. We want both honesty and unity. We want people to be able to speak their mind and say what they really believe, to have candidates be authentic and tell voters what they really want. But we also want something to bring us together, to find the consensus where it lies, because we are living in this really divisive time. And our current elections have this sort of with us or against us mindset built into them. And ranked choice voting helps coalition builders, people who can reach out and get broad support, rise to the top of the pile. And so I think the combination of those 2 is what a lot of people are missing in our politics. And so if we have elections that encourage people to reach out and build those broad coalitions, I think a lot of people will be happier with the outcomes.
Ranked choice voting May 8th, and in the news last night and again this morning, there are issues that have arisen. And I think my interest and my concern would be that ranked choice voting not be considered the problem. Is the problem, and Chris, I'll start with you and others jump in, is the problem the magnitude of the number of people? Is the problem hand counting? Is the problem needing software? Well, I guess another way to ask my question, could RPV and Central Committee making the decision being almost ahead of the game, in which the system is not really set to handle 40 or 50,000 people on that one day?
Well, it's a great question, and given the circumstances behind, this is not just one of the problems with the Republican balloting on this one is not just one man, one person, one vote. It's weighted by locality. So they have to do ranked choice voting by locality, and they've condensed the number of localities into certain polling areas. So they have a number of issues to settle out logistically. that I don't think can be settled with a single computer program. They're going to have to do some hand tabulating on this one. But I think to Delegate Hudson's point, and the emphasis on this is not just majority rule. Majority gets what they want. Most people get what they want. The element to this I think is really encouraging for our politics and today in the 21st century is that you can't forget about the second, third, and fourth place finishers and what they have brought to the election. What issues? I mean, if you look back at the 1992 election, which I often use as an example, Ross Perot finishes with 19+% of the vote, changed the election, but both political parties as a result went after that election and tried to get the Perot vote back in their party. And I like to say that Ross Perot won the debate, just lost the election. He didn't have to be president, but his campaign, because of its validity in that circumstance, was very powerful. And I think in today's binary system, this brings that element back so that the voiceless who say, look, I want this one particular issue to be of importance to both political parties can bet on that and have that impact for both parties, the two main political parties. And I think that's really exciting for America. And that's why I'm willing to give this a chance and give it a go. And I think the manner in which we're going to do it in Virginia, it's not going to be everyone all in at one time. You know, we do take our time with these reforms, and hopefully we'll get it right as we do so.
So, okay, fast forward into 2022. Do you see changes? Do you, from your perspectives, whether it's from Arlington or statewide or someone who's very much involved in politics as you are, Chris Saxman, do you see another step that Virginia would take? You know, to me, it's remarkable that I think this only goes back to about 2016 in politics. Chris brought out how it's been used in other settings, but Virginia has gotten into it relatively quickly. There are not that many other states that are even yet at this point even considering it. So Delegate Hudson and Gretchen and Chris, what do you see? What do you hope happens?
Let me just hop on this one and then hand it over, because Republicans have taken it up so quickly, which is extraordinary. They don't do these things, right? They don't make sudden moves, good, bad, or indifferent. This one was born out of necessity. The necessity is the motherhood of invention. In this case, the Republicans needed something, and this was available to them to validate all the concerns within the party, all the different factions, all the different groups, the disparate groups, and this gave them, frankly, an out from the convention process. And so I think it was timely, it was there, and they sort of backed themselves into it, and no one objected to it. That was the strangest thing. No one said, "Oh, we can't do that." They were like, "Yeah, let's do that." So that's how much change can happen and how quickly it can happen in today's environment, which is pretty interesting.
I think I also want to highlight that Virginia is going about this exactly like the states that have most embraced ranked choice voting. At the state level, there aren't that many states that are using it statewide. Maine and Alaska are the only ones. But at the local level, there's a tremendously diverse range of cities and counties that have adopted it for their local elections. Maine went statewide after having cities like Portland, Maine, elect their mayor this way for a decade. Minneapolis and St. Paul, San Francisco and Oakland, Santa Fe, Memphis and Salt Lake City and New York City have all adopted ranked choice voting for their future elections. That's a really cool, diverse stripe of American communities. So I think that you're seeing a lot of places where this resonates. You know, it's not a blue state thing. It's not a red state thing. It's a lot of different places that want to have a really practical way to identify coalition builders in diverse elections. And so that's why I'm so excited to be working with Gretchen, who is such an experienced elections operative, to make sure that as we give this a try here in Virginia, that those initial rollouts go well, that we get to have all of the practical pieces be ironed out. And then if people have a positive experience with that, if Virginia voters like it too, we can think about doing what those other states have been and building up from there.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is in Arlington, I think those who have been working on ranked choice voting for a few years, they would say it feels like it's been a longer road than, and because the Arlington Democratic Party has been using it for local nomination and endorsement processes for quite a few years now. So they're really excited about the opportunity about being able to use it on a November ballot. And while it might be new to Virginia, it's not necessarily new to the DMV area. It is used in other parts of, I think, some of the towns in Maryland are using it inside the DC metro area. So
I think one of the, since you brought up Delegate Hudson, you brought up Maine. I think one of the neat parts about the 2020 election in Maine, with respect to Maine, was the fact that Susan Collins won the state of Maine by, I think, 8 or 9 points, but her party's nominee for president lost by 8 or 9 points. So it really highlights that there are people out there who will be able to throw a ballot in the other direction. I don't know if that worked in the Senate election or not, but I think as far as a culture, it allows people to be more independent from their parties and be rewarded by the market.
And I think a great point about the Senator Collins race is that she won a clean majority on the first ballot. So it's a great example of how sometimes ranked choice voting won't come into play at all. If you've got a candidate who genuinely has the backing of the majority of the voters, then RCV isn't a factor, but it is a valuable backup option when the electorate is split and you need a way of tie breaking between more than one candidate. And so I think that the Senator Collins example was really important for people being able to observe that sometimes ranked choice voting doesn't matter at all.
Well, it also didn't leave out from the culture of Maine that they're very independent voters, but they weren't trapped in the binary option like either or, because both political parties know that that is a very important part of the Maine electorate, and it's going to be rewarded because people are going to be more culturalized to supporting that kind of a candidate who leans into that, if you will, that element of the electorate, which is exciting.
One of the biggest supporters of ranked choice voting is Maine Senator Angus King, who is an independent and a Virginia native. He's a UVA alum and has been one of the big leaders on this. And I do think Maine has that independent streak, and it's not surprising to see them lead on this.
What about in the university setting? Delegate Hudson, you teach at UVA. Angel's a student at VCU. Is this something that students, that younger voters are more interested in than their elders or their grand elders? Is it a generational thing in any way?
So let me start by saying that students are well ahead of adult politicians on this. There are campuses across the country that have been electing their student councils this way for decades, including UVA. So it's been a really natural way for them to doing it. Lots of Division I schools that you all know and love have been using ranked choice for years. But absolutely, I mean, I think when I talk to young voters, students get it immediately. I mean, I think naturally young people are a little less wedded to the ways of the past and more excited to embrace new ideas. But I think in particular, they have seen the new wave of candidates who have started to run for office. You know, the set of people who are stepping up to run has changed dramatically in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so I think they immediately recognize that we do need a practical way to run elections when you've got a lot of voices in the mix, because we want elections that engage diverse candidates and voters that have room for a lot of different voices. But we need a way to count ballots that works when you've got that many people running.
Yeah, I think the younger generation has grown up with a lot more choices. I mean, David and I grew up with Coke and Pepsi. That was it. We didn't even have Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi, right? So this generation has not only all these choices, but delivered to them within 15 or 20 minutes, or they start throwing a tizzy fit. So that's naturally going to roll up into their politics because of the culture that they've grown up in. And they want more choices. They want to have more expression. And I think this really plays into that. So, again, kudos to you for leading the charge.
I saw an interesting quote from Congressman Don Beyer pertaining to Arlington. He said, Arlington elects Democrats. He said, using ranked choice voting, a Republican might have an opportunity to get elected to an office. Explain how that, if you could, just use that as an example, how would that be possible? I think Delegate Hudson has referred to that already, but how would that happen in Arlington?
It's an interesting question. I think we're going to have to go through a couple of election cycles with it to see how those independent or Republican candidates do in a ranked choice voting system. So I don't.
Well, I think there's a lot of Republican. And so just say an obviously partisan district like Wise County versus Arlington. The outcome is Republican 70-30 or Democrat 70-30, whatever it is, 80-20 in some instances. In a ranked choice format, however, there's a lot of people who otherwise say, I'll vote for the Democrat or the Republican because they're going to win. I want to be with the winning side, and I don't really like my team, so I'll throw a vote over there. In this scenario, though, you can have a different candidate be a third person on the ballot, get a lot of second place finishes, and be elected. And that's one of the great balancing parts of this reform, is that you can't go but so far so quickly, because the electorate, a lot of people, like in Philadelphia right now, they have a primary for this for their district attorney. A lot of Republicans are switching registrations in Philadelphia to vote against the incumbent. In ranked choice voting, that might not be necessary, but I think it does, again, put a clutch or a brake on the accelerant for the overly partisan world in which we live.
It also makes independent candidates viable, and so it would make space for voices who are conservative, even if they're not Republican.
Right.
Yeah, that's more the scenario for Arlington. So
yeah.
Right, and in the same way with the Wise County vote.
And I think, to build on Chris's, sports metaphor, I think we're at a place where a lot of voters feel about their political party like they do their sports team. I mostly grew up in Nebraska. I am go big red, do or die. And I could never root for Oklahoma. And a lot of people feel that way about their party. They're just like, I'm a Democrat, I'm the blue team. And they may not ever get over that. Like, they just have a hard time imagining ever crossing lines. But if you had somebody who could really occupy that independent space and have a viable way of winning an election, who was, a step inside of either of the extreme poles, they could be a real coalition builder who speaks to a set of people who have been unengaged. And I think it's important for us to remember that even in our most heated elections, like you think the governor's race in 2017, right on the heels of President Trump's election, the majority of Virginians stayed home. In our statewide elections, we still only got 40% of the electorate to turn out in a very heated race. So 60% of the people don't think it's worth it to show up. And I think that if we have an election that makes it possible for people to really run while engaging a broader electorate, we might bring a lot of people back into our politics who have long since sworn it off.
Yeah, exactly. Hit it right on the head. And that's, we shouldn't be just a country of two political parties. I'm sorry. It's not what the founders wanted. They were against factions. They were against partisanship. And I think that for a conservative to sell this, that's probably the place you start. This was never the intent of the framers.
Okay, that sounds like perhaps a great wrap up of the show, and thank each of you, and we'll be watching to see how things progress in Arlington, and we'll be seeing how they may progress in other localities when the legislature gives them the choice to be able to do it. And we will be out there saying that whatever the confusion may be over 40, 50,000 or more people using ranked choice voting on May 8th, the problem is not ranked choice voting. The problem is the magnitude and hand counting and software that needs to catch up with what's happening. And so we hope that works well. And I thank each of you very much for being on This Week in Virginia. And have a good day. And we'll look forward to talking with you again about this issue. Thank you.